I've come to call it the subtle violence of improvement that we go through
Wow.
about uh, just noticing never good enough, never worthy enough. And that becomes like this slow hum of violence against us, ourselves. Real and unreal are conceptual ideas that the mind uses to navigate this mystery.
Mm.
And so it's not like I don't want this to feel real anymore. It's more like, oh, that's what real feels like. What we want to see in terms of ownership is there's always going to be an ownership piece behind any tension, worry, guilt, responsibility. There's always going to be belief behind that. And it's fine. We don't need to get rid of it, but we want to wake up from it. Because really, the battlefield is empty. It's just these ideas of control and manipulation and protection for a self that is really just a ghost. It's a ghost kind of built on these rituals of repair, being better, being okay. It's very ritualistic in a way.
You might be expecting this podcast to discuss hot baths, meditation techniques, and breathing exercises. But really, those are only just pressure releases, and they don't fix the true cause. The true issue is a contracted mind. And a contracted mind creates stress, upset, frustration, and impatience. A relaxed mind creates inspiration, connection, fresh ideas, and solutions to intractable problems. We're going to explore how you can relax into presence. This is the Releasing Mental Tension podcast with Rich Life. I think it's wonderful to really take a look at your patterns and your beliefs and how you've formed your identity. The more and greater awareness that you bring to that, I think that's really wonderful. But there's also a missing step too. And I think that's also really important, is to question the validity of those. And we're going to explore a topic around that today. I have a guest today on the Releasing Mental Tension podcast. Her name's Amanda Jones, and really beautiful soul. I met her through one of Amy Johnson's programs. And what really struck me about her, Amanda, you've got just this beautiful way with words. I feel like you paint this incredible picture, but also there's a lot of depth behind it too. It's not just a pretty veneer with the way that you describe things. So I hope you can bring some of that to our conversation. Amanda's awesome. I was reading her book a little bit, and it struck me that she's come so far even just since then. So, Amanda, tell us a little bit of your backstory, just kind of the Cliff's Notes versions of how you came to share what you now share.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love these conversations. I was a professional dancer in New York City for 25 years. Well, not in New York. That was the last 10 years. And developed a long-standing eating disorder and really kind of came crashing down, unable to really get freedom or anything. And then I discovered Amy, and this is probably 10 years ago, um, had a great kind of subtle awakening that really expanded out in terms of my seeing what was happening in the mind and the body and identification. And so then I went through coach training and I became a coach and I work with her in her community and I work with private clients. And finding freedom from the eating disorders kind of kick-started this wider understanding of how we operate, how we are trained and conditioned, and how we can be free of that. I really feel like it's in my book I call it uncovery because there's something in us that is always there but it gets covered up by conditioning and ideas and identities, and so to start to wake up from that is profound, and that's pretty much what I do, what I work with people about, in terms of maybe anxiety or depression or habits or just a fascination of reality and how reality is constructed and projected, and uh, finding the playfulness that is available in being free from beliefs and patterns and identities that we hold quite tightly. So that's kind of a Cliff Notes version, if you will.
Yeah. So it sounds like you came from that dancing background, that really pushing yourself and improving yourself and also holding yourself to an incredibly high standard,
Yes,
creating that in your head.
yeah. From a very young age, I mean, I've come to call it the subtle violence of improvement that we go through
Wow.
about just noticing never good enough, never good enough, never worthy, and that becomes like this slow hum of violence against us, ourselves, and it can start to really manifest into habits and behaviors and very painful addictions to try to get away from that underlying hum of discontent, because the violence, the subtle violence of improvement is never ending. There's never, it's just because it's conceptual in the mind, it's never going to reach a place where, okay, I'm done. I'm good now. It's like the urban development project that never ends. And so when we can start to notice, where am I in this kind of improvement, constant improvement mindset or consciousness? Like you said in the beginning, we can start to question the validity of those claims and start to see that they're not commands to actually follow through on and believe. Rather, they are blips arising in thought, arising in consciousness, not actual reflections of reality. They're a reflection of the mind.
Yeah. And those reflections can seem really real,
Absolutely. That's
really
what
visceral.
real, yeah, that's what real feels like.
Yeah.
Real and unreal are conceptual ideas that the mind uses to navigate this mystery. And
Mm.
so it's not like I don't want this to feel real anymore. It's more like, oh, that's what real feels like.
Tell me more about that because that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I totally get the differentiation
Yeah.
that you're making. So I'd love to hear more about it.
Well, when we're coming from the idea that because something feels so real, that must mean it's either that it needs to be manipulated and controlled, and that like there's an agenda behind it because it feels so real. What I'm saying is, well, I'll give you an example. I was having way back when I was uncovering. I was talking to someone and I said, um, "Gosh, it all feels so real." and I want to feel better. And she said something like, why do you need to feel better? And at that moment, something like, and it just dawned that I don't need to feel better. I don't need to feel less real in any specific experience. That kind of closing down and closing off of any feeling that feels real is just an attempt to escape feeling.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but I often have clients say, yes, but it feels so real. Real is a feeling. That's what real feels like. It doesn't mean anything more than that. There isn't something on the other side of it that is better or worse. So we don't, in other words, we don't need to be in a war with how real it feels, because that's what real feels like.
It's hard because I think that when it feels that real, we have a sense of it in our body. We have these thoughts in our minds, and that's all we can see. And so it sounds like maybe what you're saying is that you don't have to take the reality out of it. You don't have to make it unreal.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Maybe what you can do is start to see and experience it fully without trying to move away from it, without trying to escape, without trying to uncreate it.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
I think that that's what we're trying to do a lot of the times is we're like, well, I've created this, and we can get to this spiritual place of I've created this, so I'm going to uncreate it, and that is not our job.
Exactly. That's a heavy burden to carry
Yeah.
uh, because one, we don't know how to do it. So that leaves some doubt and some kind of unsteady unsettledness. And so if we can kind of close the gap between I created this, so I have to uncreate it. The gap in between that is suffering, tension, distraught, you know, a lot of unease. So if something is arising, I don't even know who created it, what created it. It's just arising. So then I don't know what needs to happen. If I don't know what's going on, I don't know how it should look like. I don't know how it should be unfolding.
Hmm.
So that's you know, a little piece that kind of falls out of the house of cards of
Hmm.
in terms of trying to control experience.
So it sounds to me like you want to maybe remove some of the judgment from it
Ownership,
and
yes.
see that it's just kind of a reality. If it's real, it is real, and
Mhm.
it's a reality, not necessarily the reality.
Exactly. I think that's a vital point because if it's the reality, then that's got a lot of conditions on it for the self idea. How do I fit into this? What am I supposed to do with this? You know, that separation between a reality and a me or life and me. How am I supposed to navigate this? But seeing it as a reality arising in this mystery, the ownership of having to do something about it drops away.
Hmm.
It just doesn't make sense.
Hmm. Well, the other thing that I just maybe heard in that in what you said was that we claim it. So we claim it and we make it ours. And that's not a necessary step, it sounds like. It doesn't have to be ours. It doesn't have to be claimed. And actually, a lot of the times that taking ownership of it is what really gives it a lot of fuel and a lot of pain and suffering comes from that.
It gives it all the fuel.
Hmm.
If it's owned to be mine, I created this. I directed the synapses in the brain to create this thought and this feeling in the body, and I, you know, that all of that is extremely full of suffering,
Hmm.
and it's just a misunderstanding. It's how we're trained from a very young age. Like you see, and this isn't wrong. This is just how it happens in this physical reality that looks like everybody is separate and there's things you do and things you don't do and other people are separate. So like when a baby or a toddler is learning to walk and they get up and walk and you say, "Good job, you did so well." You know, that kind of enthusiasm and encouragement is needed in this dimension. But what happens is the self idea starts to form and takes ownership of every single experience, every single thought, every like it just that just seems to be the thing that happens here.
Hmm.
So we can notice when there's certain things that feel off or create a lot of suffering, look for look for the ownership piece in that. Is this really mine? Did I really um, create this? And if it feels like I did, get a little bit more specific in how that happened. How did you do that? Because the implication is that you should undo it, like you said before.
Hmm.
And again, we're in this place where we don't know how to do that because we didn't create it in the first place in that conscious way. Consciousness as one field creates and dissolves and creates and dissolves, but not the self idea that's been um, learned to be who we are.
Hmm. I do you have maybe a story of how that might play out and how seeing that can be transformative, maybe in your work with clients or in your own life? I'd love to hear like a practical example of how maybe some of this esoteric, for some listeners, it might be a little
Yeah.
esoteric, how it really plays out and can change things.
Yeah, I've been very, accused of being too esoteric and too impractical. But it's funny because the practical examples are can be helpful, but I really want to point people towards not holding on too tightly to how it should look
Yeah.
or how it's going to look or what shape it's going to form. But given that little side quest, I would say an example could be, say you are worried about money. You have this constant worry about having enough money or getting money or having money. There's going to be a belief in there that has been patterned throughout childhood and beyond, and maybe before, that money equals worthiness. And when we can start to see, okay, that pattern comes online and it brings a feeling like worry or rumination, we can start to see, okay, first of all, the starting premise is that's not my pattern. That's a learned pattern in the programming. And the feelings that arises within that belief are the same programming. So then when it comes up, we can get a little bit of a distance from the owning of it. As in, for example, saying, I'm a person who worries about money, or I'm a person who needs to have things planned out specifically so that I feel okay. Even if that's the case, that even if you identify like that, it's still the patterning and it's okay. But the what we want to see in terms of ownership is there's always going to be an ownership piece behind any tension, worry, guilt, responsibility. There's always going to be belief behind that. And it's fine. We don't need to get rid of it. but we want to wake up from it. And that could look like it arises, worry, rumination arises. I know what that is. That's a pattern, it's not mine. And it really just kind of deflates the whole experience rather than trying to get rid of anything. Like, oh, why is this coming up again? I know it's not real. I know it's a pattern. Why is it still coming up again? All of that we want to see with less concern.
Mm. Yeah. Uh, I really feel like it's kind of the conclusions that we make about something or
Yeah.
that we have made about something that
Mhm.
really can drive these stories to perpetuate themselves. It's like the moral at the end of the story. Like you can tell the story without the moral. And maybe, do you mind if I give an example that just
Sure.
recently happened in my life? So, this was actually yesterday. I and this will be very vulnerable, so
Okay.
give me some
You're good. You're
some
good.
grace here. Uh, so when I was a kid, I was in fifth grade, and I was in a pool party, and we were pushing the watermelon. It was this game where you'd push the watermelon to the other side of the pool, and we were on teams. And I got pushed under the water. Was It was really scary because I there were so many people kind of coming on top of me. I started to kind of have trouble breathing and was came up, thankfully. It was probably like maybe 10, 15 seconds. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it felt like I was under there for an hour and I was never gonna come up. And I came up sputtering, got out of the pool, and started to walk around the pool on the outside on the sidewalk. And there was this other kid that maybe had the similar thing happen to him. He was upset too. He came out and he was walking along as well. And we weren't walking together, but he was very popular. Let's say that. Or at least in my idea of him, he was one of the popular kids. And there were some girls that came out and they got him and they brought him back to the party. And I continued to walk by myself, crying. And I probably cried harder. And I think the conclusion that I came to was that I wasn't wanted. And so I patterned a lot of my life around that, around proving that I was wanted and making other people prove that I was wanted. And of course, when you do that, it never is enough. And you want more and more proof. I did that in my careers. I burned myself out of two careers trying to prove to myself that I was wanted, trying to make sure that I would provide enough, uh, give enough to people so that they would want and value me. Because I didn't think that I was of value, that I was enough in and of myself. And yesterday, I really took a look at that belief and I took a look at the story without the conclusion. It was really hard. I felt it with the conclusion, and that was painful. And I felt it without the conclusion, and that was less painful. Then it became just what happened, right? So maybe this is kind of the direction that you're going in, that what you're talking about is when we start to give up this moral of the story We don't tack that on at the end. And we really go back and question the morals that we've already created. It can really change our lives.
100%. Thank you for sharing that. And I relate. I think we are looking for love and the ways that that starts to manifest and become a job um, is, like you said, it's really based on what events happened, and then the conclusion was drawn and never looked at again.
Yeah.
Can we have an experience and not draw a conclusion? Can I have an experience and not write the ending? And we do it naturally.
Mm.
It's just when the mind goes into the archives to see what is this, what's happening here. Oh, this is what's happening here. That becomes a pattern. And so we want to just recognize that and see, can I not write the ending to this story immediately? Can I give it to the field of consciousness and be surprised instead of being in expectation and certainty? That's a whole different play of life. It's more playful, it's more wonder inducing, it's more natural.
Oh, well, I guess what people probably are wondering then is when I go into these stories, it just seems like I'm automatically caught up in them, right? Like I can't help but to create the ending. I
Mm-hmm.
can't help but to be have no awareness around it. In fact, I sometimes don't even want awareness. I want to put my head in the sand and hide from it. So, what would you tell somebody who would like to start to explore this in their life?
So I just want to say one thing about being caught up,
Yeah.
because I think that has, I've done a lot of exploration around what is actually happening when we say, I'm caught up in this. And what it appears to me to be what is happening is that the witness thought is absent. And then after the fact comes online and says, I was caught up. Wow, I was lost. I was uh, completely believing that story. But the only thing that was happening was there was no witness thought, meaning some other identity that is a witness looking at what's happening. And we kind of, this isn't wrong or anything. I'm just laying out the phenomenon of it,
Mm.
because we can really get into a pattern of trying not to get caught up.
Yeah.
And that's the self idea claiming it was present when it was absent. Again, it's trying to claim all these things, all these experiences. I have a funny example of this. I One day years ago, I stepped into the shower with my socks on, and when I realized what happened, it dawned on me again, if this self idea was actually real and in control, she wouldn't have let that happen. Like where was she when I stepped into the shower with my socks on, out, in the other room having coffee? All these little things we have to start to look really closely to see the inconsistencies of the narration. If this self idea is so powerful and all knowing, where is it when I'm screwing up?
Mm.
Where is it when I'm misbehaving? Well, it comes in afterwards and tells me everything I'm doing wrong. Tells me everything that should have happened and shouldn't have happened. But it's never there in the moment. It comes after the fact. So if somebody is caught up a lot in trying to be different or trying to have a different experience, I would suggest noticing how that narration comes after the fact. We want to kind of slow the whole thing down and watch the phenomenon of it very impersonally. Because really, the battlefield is empty. It's just these ideas of control and manipulation and protection for a self that is really just a ghost. It's a ghost kind of built on these rituals of repair, being better, of being okay. It's very ritualistic in a way. I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of went went off to Jupiter for a moment, but I'm back.
No, I love that. Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting idea, actually, that you talk about how the ego mind, if it was really all that it says it is, then it should it should take care of things a lot better than we actually do.
That's right.
And I think one of the things that really gets in our way is that that ego mind is very good at distracting itself. So where was it when you were wearing your socks into the shower? It was probably analyzing, trying to figure out things. It was busy, but not with what was really needed in the moment.
Right. It was busy. It wasn't present.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
never present. It's always after the fact.
Yeah.
If it was present, if it was an actual entity, thing, identity, me, then nothing would go wrong. Nothing, I would never misbehave. I would never make a mistake. So these little clues are like poking holes in the veil of this self idea and identity. The veil of I am in this body, I am this body, I am this uh, structure of beliefs, of conditioning. That's me. We poke holes enough to start to see the veil is really just mist. It starts to become translucent. There starts to become less tension when it arises. It's not a steel wall, it's more like a cheesecloth. You know that kind of fabric.
Yeah.
It's cheese, it's like it's got holes in it.
Starts to become see-through.
Right, translucent.
Hmm. Well, hmm. So it's really interesting that you are exploring the nature of the actual ego structure, you might call it that, though, or just beliefs, ideas, concepts. And you're noticing that it's always going out away from us. It's kind of like a seeker or a searcher, and it likes to go off on side quests.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you have a video game, there's the main quest, which is the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are side quests, which is stuff that is going to happen in the future, stuff that happened in the past. And the ego mind is very good at the side quests. I mean, it just wraps around all of these different ideas. But it's funny, I feel like the side quests don't ever get solved, really.
No,
They just
there's,
kind of
yeah.
come up and go.
Mm-hmm.
And if if ever the side quest gets solved, it's because we're present with it. It's because it's become a part of the main quest. I'm also getting the sense that there's something else that's underneath the surface of that. Because if we just said, okay, great, there's, the ego is just not what we think it is, we can kind of set it aside, or we can examine it and start to see through it. That means that there's something else that has to be underneath that, because there can't be just nothing. That can't be the only thing that's there to serve us and help us.
Yeah,
So I'm sure that you could speak to
I'll try. I mean,
that.
the, the 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 sticky part of that is that what is beyond, beneath, around the little blips of self-consciousness, ego consciousness, is not accessible by the conceptual mind. In other words, it doesn't have language. So we can kind of speak around it. We can call it awareness, consciousness, but really to be in touch with it is to stop pretending that you are who you think you are in the mind and start to be more fascinated with this quiet, nonverbal sense of aliveness, or even that's too many words. But there is something humming, buzzing, vibrating that is not conceptual. In other words, it doesn't have words, language, symbols, but we can use some of those to kind of point to it. That's what I sense is around and beneath the little blips of story, and identity and belief. And so when we are in story, identity, and belief, we can kind of portal through that to someplace that isn't concerned about any of that. It has no problem with anything. It has no judgment. It has no opinion. Everybody can kind of sense that space. It might be unfamiliar, but it starts to become more fascinating to be in or to recognize than the other stuff.
Yeah. And when we start to let the ego kind of dissolve, then that's what's there. We find it through, I wouldn't even say finding it, because finding it is a doing,
Yeah,
but it arises and it's always been there. That's the other thing that we can
yeah.
forget, that it's always been there.
It's so obvious that it's hidden.
Yeah.
And so that's good news. That's good news. It's not really hidden, but it's so obvious that we have to kind of take a leap of faith to extract ourselves, to feel like it's safe enough to extract ourselves out of the thinking, the identities, the stories. This, it has to be safe enough to do that, to really let go of pretending to be who we think we are. Now the mind is like, well, yeah, but if I don't know that landscape, I don't know, if I'm not that, who am I? It always has to replace. It always has to draw a conclusion. So again, if we can tap into that space of non-conceptual sensing, whatever you want to call it, without drawing a conclusion, without replacing identity with something else. And it's a game, it's a dance, it's not serious. There's nothing about this dimension that is serious. It takes a mind and conditioning and self identity to label something serious, and that's fine. But when it comes to your freedom and your awakening and your release from the tyranny of self, it's not it's not serious. We cannot take it seriously.
I think the hard part is the mind wants to take almost everything
Right.
seriously.
And that's a
Uh,
clue. That's a clue. If everything's serious, nothing's serious.
yeah.
So that, you know,
So then it turns the awakening, or whatever you want to call this act of discovering truth, it turns it into a very serious
yeah.
job that only it can do. And it says, I am your key. You
Right.
follow
And
the
it's got
key.
a framework, and
Hmm.
whatever's unfathomable outside of that framework, it brushes aside, like anything esoteric or illogical or nonsensical. It's got to stick in it to its framework. So whenever there's a framework, we know we're in thought, we're in mental activity, and that's fine. Again, nothing is going wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong. We're just looking at the phenomena of it, and it's starting to expand the boundaries of what has been kind of learned to be an edge. Can't go any farther. I need to know more before I can go farther, or I need a little bit more certainty that what I'm experiencing is okay and true. We just want to push those edges out a little bit more and get expanded. And I think for in my work, play and lightness and that child sense of wonder helps us get there, helps us take everything less seriously. And so when we are in serious thought, it's there's still a little glimmer of it's not really that serious, you know.
Well, okay. I really like what you're talking about with the childish kind of playfulness
Yeah.
versus the seriousness of the ego mind. And it's kind of interesting. I'm just kind of reflecting on the act of growing up. I
Oh,
feel because I feel like we go from that childlike state. And then we have this idea that, oh, I really need to start to take life seriously because there are very serious matters like finances and finding relationships and being successful and all of these things that
no.
are important, but it sounds like we're using the wrong tool. We kind of switch drivers, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this topic because I used to play librarian. I don't know if I've told this story to you before. I used to play librarian, and I'd have a book and I'd have a stamp, and then I'd do this and a stamp. And I would be so immersed in playing a job. That was my job. Like I was pretending I had a job. That's never stopped. We're still pretending to have job. We're still pretending to look at a bank account. We're still in that experience. But what's happened is it's taken through conditioning, through reinforcing of from our environment. There's a certain point where you're not playing anymore. This is real. But nobody I've asked can tell me at what point did it shift over into grown up, adult, serious. Nobody can tell me at what point that happened. So what I'm saying is it never happened. It's been just a misunderstanding, just an innocent adoption of other people's ideas. So the other driver is to see, I think, we've never stopped playing. We've never stopped playing make believe. And to really kind of feel what that feels like remember when you were a child and you were just playing and pretending, and it's it's our natural state. We never shifted over. There was never a threshold where we grew up and now all that's over with. Nobody can tell me when that happened.
Well, that would have some very serious implications serious implications.
Yeah.
If we are still playing and pretending, it's kind of like a kid's games. They sometimes would get very absorbed into it and it would become a little bit more serious, like
Yeah.
playing doctor and
Yeah.
uh, we really this the Pooh Bear is very sick right now. We need to take care of Pooh Bear. And it's kind of interesting that if that's true that we never stopped playing, then we're make-believing who we think we are. We're make-believing an identity. We're make-believing a role, all of these different roles that we have in our lives. And if we can recognize that, I think some of the playfulness can come back and it becomes a little bit more joyful and fun. And that's what everybody is seeking. They don't want it to be serious. In fact, it feels
Yeah,
really bad.
exactly.
The more and more that they contract around this play of living and being in life, the more painful it becomes. It doesn't feel good. And so that feeling is actually an invitation. It's saying, hey, open back up. Realize that you're make-believing this, that you're playing at this. And I think that you talked about freedom before. There isn't much more freedom than when we're playing and we have that in our minds that we're playing.
Yes, and we can be very serious players.
Yeah.
Like Pooh Bear, I mean, this is a serious operation we're about to do. We gotta, stop screwing around. Let's focus.
His
That
stuffing's
has a
coming out.
right, that that has a that has a sense of presence to it that's very different than rumination and worry and oh, who am I? I need to blah, blah. The child is very seriously playing. So I'm not suggesting that you should never be serious, but like to your point, we're still in make believe. This is all make believe. It is all made up. I will die on that hill. It is all made up. Nobody knows what is going on. There's this great quote. I think it's a Jungian quote. Life is like arriving to a movie halfway through, not knowing what's going on, afraid to ask anybody else what's going on, and then having to leave until it ends. But that's everybody. It's not just you that doesn't know how to do this and how to be okay. It's everybody. And that kind of allows it to be more impersonal. If nobody knows what to do here and how to do it right and how to be, then we kind of relax into the mystery of it.
Yeah, there's no really right way to do any of this. There's ways that might be challenging and we might find out the hard way, but I think that everything really serves us. Now, I can imagine that maybe somebody would be a little miffed. They'd be a little
Yeah.
upset about us making the implication that their story is somehow make believe, that
Mhm.
it's light, it's not even really true. How can we come to terms with the fact that it feels so real? We're kind of coming back to that, feels so real, but also that it's a make believe. How can we maybe wake up to that fact a little bit more and allow ourselves to experience a little bit more of the playfulness of life?
Yeah, I was going to actually mention that. I would say notice when there's an argument for your suffering. There's an argument for your relevance. Uh, it's not make believe. This is real. What are you talking about? Like that kind of argumentative narration. Notice how that arises, and you feel it in your body. It's very uncomfortable. It's very defensive. And then just take a moment to consider, do I want to argue for the relevance of a ghost that doesn't actually ever come to a resolution to where it's finally satisfied? Do I want to keep arguing for the relevance of that? Or do I want to expand and see what else there is? Do I want to stay in this little painful identity with all its conditions and stories and threats and promises and argue for that relevance? Or do I want to expand? It's not like annihilation for that thing. It's expansion. And just to note, there's nobody doing this consciously. We're not arguing consciously. This is patterning. Again, we want to see the impersonal nature of patterning, and then just take another glance at it from a different perspective and say, do I want to keep arguing for this suffering, for this pain, for this worry, for this fear? And will that actually satisfy anything? Or is it just kind of a recursive loop of a self trying to be relevant?
It's tricky because it does seem like it does something for us. Like it gives us this control, maybe an illusionary control or a weight that feels like it's deserved. And there's a lot of really challenging things that have happened in my life and in your life and in everyone's life, and we don't want to say that none of that matters. What we're saying, maybe you can agree and disagree with me. I have no idea what I'm about to say, so we're going to find out. We're saying that it's not worth continuing to hold it, to
Mm-hmm.
keep it. We're saying that you can experiment with dropping it, setting it aside, or letting it go. However way that makes sense to you to do, you kind of figure that out as you go along. Like you don't need to know how to do that. That's one of the biggest things I feel like everybody wants to know how to let go. But you figure that out on your own. That's not on you.
Right. And I think a good pointer for that is to notice where you're already letting go.
Mhm.
Notice in areas where it's easy or it's already happening. I talk about this a lot in terms of the how-to questions. Notice where that's already happening because it is. It's not something we're starting right now to manufacture. It's always already happening, and we just want to notice that. Remember, it's hidden because it's so obvious. So if we start to see what's obviously already naturally being let go of, naturally coming in, naturally arising and then dissolving, it has a ripple effect in our experiences in different topics in different areas of life.
It's like we can let that bleed through in other areas of our lives.
Yeah.
We let the easefulness of it, the playfulness of it,
Mm-hmm.
we let it expand.
Yeah.
And if we have to allow that, though, like we can't make that happen. We can't control it in any way. None of this is control. I think that's one of the biggest things that it makes it hard for people. Well, this has been just wonderful. I know that you have a podcast. I think it's called, is it Wonderland?
The Wonderland.
The
Three words.
Wonderland. Yes. Yes. I definitely recommend Amanda's podcast. If you want to see where Amanda was near the beginning, I recommend her book too. But really, I think you've just come such a long way. That it's a really wonderful book, and it will give you a really great start, but really listening to some of these other things with more depth is going to be so valuable. So I would love for you to have maybe the last word on this. Good luck. Or I'll give you the ability to share anything that comes to mind that might make this feel a little bit complete for the people listening.
I would say look towards the radical. And by that I mean there is nothing wrong with you. You've never done anything wrong. Anything you have kind of hovering around as a problem or a concern, that's kind of trying to open you up. If you feel pressure, that's the vastness of life pushing against you to expand. And it's a radical idea to kind of tip over into that landscape of being done with pretending, being done with fighting, battling, manipulating, calculating. But even one, and it happens now, not tomorrow or next year, it happens right now. You can be done. And just in that split moment, split second of that starts to cultivate something in us that begins to emerge in a way that we find familiar, maybe kind of ancient.
Yeah, something that we didn't know we knew.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, do you have any other great resources for people? How can they reach out to you if they're interested in connecting with you?
Well, my website, email, um, uncoveryspace.com. Sorry, I had to think about it for a moment. Uncoveryspace.com is my website, and you can reach me there. You can, and I'm sure you'll put it in the information.
Yes.
And then the podcast is The Wonderland on any podcast platform, and the book is Uncovery, and that's on Amazon.
Nice. This is the Releasing Mental Tension podcast with Rich Light. I'm on a mission to help people release their mental tension because I know that it helps them to be more capable, creative, and compassionate human beings. And I need your help. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you'd like more resources, visit richliferealization.com. Your vibrant life is a single thought away.